Hello, my name is Dorothy McFadden. I'm one of the registered dietitians with the St. Luke's Bariatric program. Today I'm going to talk to you about vegetarian diets after weight loss surgery. There are different types of vegetarians. There's a vegetarian, which is a person who does not eat meat, fowl, poultry, seafood, or products containing these foods. There's a true vegan that only eats plant-based products. There's a lacto-vegetarian, which means they eat plant-based foods and dairy products. An ovo-vegetarian that eats plant-based foods and eggs. Lacto-ovo vegetarian, which is one of the most common vegetarians that eat plant-based foods, dairy products, and eggs. Pesco or pesca, they eat plant-based foods, dairy products, eggs, and seafood. And then a new type of vegetarian that's emerging called the Flexitarian. They eat animal foods in limited quantity and frequency. For instance, if they're traveling or going to someone else's home for a meal, they may eat animal products just on those occasions. So there's a wide variety of ways that you can become a vegetarian. Benefits of being a vegetarian. There's a lower risk of heart disease. It lowers your LDL levels or your bad cholesterol and total cholesterol. It lowers your rate of high blood pressure because you have more potassium and calcium in your diet. It lowers the rate of type 2 diabetes. It lowers your cancer risk because you have increased ingestion of phytochemicals. You tend to have a lower body mass index or weigh less when you're vegetarian. And well-planned vegetarian diets are appropriate for all stages of the lifestyle, including pregnancy, breastfeeding, infancy, childhood, adolescence, adulthood, and for athletes. It just requires more careful planning. But overall, vegetarians tend to have a longer lifespan than people who are not vegetarians. Vegetarians have reduced saturated fat and trans fat intake because they eat more whole foods. They have a total reduced cholesterol intake because they don't eat animal proteins. They also have higher intakes of fruits, vegetables, nuts, whole grains, soy products, and fiber, and higher intakes of magnesium, potassium, vitamin C and E, folic acid, carotenoids, flavonoids, and phytochemicals, which all help prevent cancer. Rates of vegetarianism. In 2006, 2.3% of U.S. adults, or 4.9 million people, followed a vegetarian diet. 1.4% of U.S. adults follow a total vegan diet. In 2005, 3% of 8 to 18-year-olds followed a vegetarian diet, and 1% of 8 to 18-year-olds followed a vegan diet. So it's growing, but it still is a minority of people in the U.S. that eat vegetarian diets. Nutrient intakes. Vegans tend to have lower intakes of B12 because they don't eat animal proteins, calcium, vitamin D, zinc, and fatty acids. But there's an availability of a great deal of new fortified products, such as soy milk that's fortified with vitamin A, vitamin D, and calcium, almond milk, meat analogs, soy-based analogs, juices, and breakfast cereals impact the nutrient intake of vegetarians because these fortified foods enable them to get these nutrients. In addition, it increases their intake of zinc and riboflavin. So nutrient considerations. If you've had weight loss surgeries, well, one of the things that we really focus on is protein. So plant protein can meet protein requirements when a variety is consumed. An assortment of plant foods eaten over the course of a day can provide all the essential amino acids. Protein is made up of amino acids. There's amino acids that your body can make, and there's amino acids that your body needs to get from food. If you don't get all your essential amino acids, your body is forced to break down your muscle to get those needed amino acids. So that's why it's important to have an assortment of plant foods to get all those essential amino acids. Complementary proteins, which are proteins that contain some of the essential amino acids, but not all. If you put them together, they provide all the essential amino acids, do not need to be eaten at the same meal. Years ago, it was thought that that was the case, but it's no longer needed to be eaten at the same time. We've learned that it's not essential. Soybeans are considered a complete protein because they have all the essential amino acids. Vegans may have higher protein needs as protein from cereals and legumes are less well digested because of the high fiber content. Complementary proteins. Non-animal sources of protein generally do not contain all the essential amino acids that I mentioned on the previous slide. Legumes, which are lentils, beans, and peas, lack methionine and tryptophan. Whole grains, such as brown rice, oats, and whole wheat, lack isoleucine and lysine. So many cultures naturally include sources of all amino acids. For example, falafel and pita, rice and beans, peanut butter and toast. If you combine those things together, you get all your essential amino acids. So in general, if you combine grains and seeds, grains and legumes, legumes and seeds, they will provide all your essential amino acids. Vegan diets are marginal in omega-3 fatty acids as they do not contain fish or eggs. So vegan diets can be low in EPA and DHA, fatty acids that are important for heart health and in the development of the eye and brain. Soy milk and breakfast bars are fortified with DHA, and ALA can be converted to DHA and is found in flaxseed, walnuts, canola oil, and seed. And microalgae, which is a supplement that many vegans take, is rich in DHA. Iron. Iron in plant foods is called non-heme iron, and vitamin C intake increases the absorption of non-heme iron. Inhibitors of iron absorption include phytates, calcium, polyphenolics in tea, coffee, herbs, and cocoa. Recommended iron take for vegetarians is 1.8 times higher than non-vegetarians due to the decreased absorption of non-heme iron. Sources of iron include dried beans and peas, lentils, enriched cereals, whole grain products, dried fruit, dark green leafy vegetables, and molasses. Zinc. The availability of zinc from vegetarian diets is lower due to the higher phytic acid content. Sources include soy products, legumes, grains, cheese, nuts, and wheat germ. Citric acid can increase zinc absorption just like it increases iron absorption. Preparation techniques such as soaking and sprouting beans, grains, and seeds, as well as leavening bread, can reduce the phytic acid binding and increase availability of zinc. Iodine. Vegans may not get adequate iodine, and there's increased risk of deficiency and a goiter. Some foods, such as soybeans, cruciferous vegetables, and sweet potatoes, can promote a goiter. A goiter happens when you have a low iodine diet and your thyroid is required to produce more hormones, and as a result, it gets very enlarged and forms a goiter or a large lump in your throat. A quarter teaspoon of iodized salt provides enough iodine to meet needs and eliminate the result of a goiter. Calcium. Lacto-vegetarians meet calcium needs the same as non-vegetarians. Vegans tend to have a lower intake and often fall below the recommended dietary allowance for calcium. And vegans do have a 30% higher risk of fracture due to lower calcium intake. Fruit and vegetables rich in potassium and magnesium can slow bone calcium losses and decrease calcium losses in the urine. Calcium-fortified foods or calcium supplements can help meet the needs of vegetarians. Low oxalate greens such as bok choy, broccoli, Chinese cabbage, collards, and kale are all good sources of calcium. The oxalates in spinach and Swiss chard reduce calcium absorption, making these vegetables poor sources of usable calcium. Vitamin D. Vegans who do not use vitamin D supplements or fortified foods have lower serum vitamin D levels and reduced bone mass. Fortified foods include cow's milk, soy milk, rice milk, orange juice, and some margarines. Vitamin D2 is ergocalciferol, is produced from yeast and is acceptable for vegans. Vitamin D3 or cholecalciferol is produced from animal products and is okay for lacto-vegetarians. B12. Lacto-ovo vegetarians can obtain adequate B12 from dairy foods and eggs. Vegans should definitely use fortified foods such as fortified soy and rice milk, breakfast cereals, and nutritional yeast supplements. Vegetarian diets are rich in folic acid, but they are not rich in B12. As a result, folic acid can mask a B12 deficiency, so it's important to get good sources of both. Meal planning approaches as a vegetarian. Choose a variety of foods, whole grains, vegetables, fruits, legumes, nuts, seeds, and dairy and eggs if you're a lacto-ovo vegetarian. Minimize intake of foods that are highly sweetened or high in sodium. Just because candy is vegetarian does not mean it's good for you. Choose a variety of fruits and vegetables. Choose low-fat or non-fat dairy products. Take a B12 supplement and vitamin D supplement to prevent deficiencies. General guidelines: you should include 2 servings of fat per day, 2 servings of fruit per day, 4 servings per day of vegetables, and then legumes, nuts, and other protein-rich foods, 5 servings per day, and grains equal 6 servings per day. So as a result, vegetarians tend to have a much higher carbohydrate intake than non-vegetarians, but the carbohydrates they eat are less processed and more whole foods. And I just added on at the end of this presentation a vegetarian glossary. Nutritional yeast, that's a health supplement that's grown on molasses, sugar beets, and wood pulp, and it's an excellent source of B12. Rennet is an enzyme from stomach of calves used to coagulate cheese. Seitan is a replacement for meat made from gluten. Tempeh is a replacement for meat made from fermented soybeans. And textured vegetable protein is derived from soy flour and used as a substitute for ground beef. So you may see like soy granules in the supermarket, and that's made from textured vegetable protein. Thank you for listening to my presentation on vegetarian diets. If you have any further questions, you can reach me at 484-426-2603. Thank you.